I'm privileged to be here with my teacher and mentor, my Rabbi Weiss, who is the founder of Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, the YCT Rabbinical School, where I had the privilege of attending. Yeshivat Maharat, training Orthodox women scholars to be in the rabbinic clergy, the founder of the IRF, the co-founder of the IRF, the Modern Orthodox Rabbinical Association, who is fueling energy into PORAT, the new Open Orthodox think tank in the broader community, and has been serving for decades at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale, the Beit, and leads Amcha, which has been an activist arm for Klal Yisrael for decades. It's a great privilege and honor.
It's great to be with you, Shmuly, one of the great souls and voices in our community.
So we're going to talk briefly just about Open Orthodoxy. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired the creation of this movement and what it's all about for you?
Well, I felt that the modern orthodoxy that I had grown up with had moved to the right, precipitously to the right, and there was a need for a voice of modern orthodoxy that was more open. It's orthodox in that there is a profound and deep belief in what's called Torah min hashamayim, heteronomous law, that the law and the Torah was given by God. And it's orthodox in that it's uncompromising in its commitment to meticulous observance of halakha. But it's open, it's inclusive, it's non-judgmental. It believes in a Masorah that is a hybrid between two sentences. One sentence is Shema b'ni musar avicha va'al titosh Torah imecha, that our past tradition, taking into account the full gamut of historical legal precedent, is critical, but we're not cemented in the past. There's another pasuk, V'kamta v'alita el hashofet asher yeh bayamim hahem, go to the judge of your time, and rabbinic application is evolving. It's ongoing. It's often the case, Shmuly, that when one says orthodoxy, the last thing you think about is open. And when one says open, the last thing you think about is orthodoxy. But I believe from the tension between the two, that's where profound creativity comes from.
Beautiful. What has happened with conversion to Judaism within Orthodoxy, and how do you think leadership should be responding to that today?
Well, I think we've made a major mistake within the Rabbinical Council of America, for example, when the chief rabbinate made demands upon them about conversion. They went to a centralized GPS process. And I oppose centralization of rabbinic authority. I think conversion should be left up to the local rabbi in the community who knows the situation and the condition and halakha, and we should be relying upon them. Just a quick statistic. In Israel, conversion is controlled by the state, that is by the chief rabbinate. There are 300,000 Russian Jews who are not halakh, 300 Russians who are not halakhic Jews, who have come on aliyah. They're patrilineal, most of them are patrilineal. And of the 300,000, there are now statistics that indicate after all these years, only 7% of those 300,000 have been converted. And the numbers here being converted through the centralized system, it's a very, very low number. There are Batei Dinim only in select cities. In many cities, there are no Batei Dinim. According in Phoenix, I doubt whether there is any centralized Bet Din connected to the RCA. And so I think we have to lower the barriers. This is a time for us to look at halakha, and we should be much more inclusive and welcoming of converts.
Many in Orthodoxy have defined very strict gender roles, and you've advocated for more inclusivity, even the leadership of women within the community. Can you talk a little bit about where that's at today?
Sure. The truth of the matter is, and it has to be put out there, is that we part with our conservative and reform colleagues in that Orthodoxy does not believe that is not fully egalitarian. We're not egalitarian. 90% of what men can do, women can do, or what women can do, men can do. But there are 10% of distinctions. There's stuff that a woman can do that a man cannot do, and what a man can do, and what a woman can do. Just one of the most basic halachot is that we're matrilineal. That means if the mother is Jewish, even if the father is not, the child is Jewish. If it's the reverse, the child is not Jewish. Who could take a convert, a woman converting to the mikveh? Only a woman could really do that. In the same breath, we believe that public prayer leading what's called Varim Shebekdusha, that's a man's domain and not a woman's domain. So in that sense, we are where we're at. But we, in the same breath, we have a respectful disagreement with those on our right, in that we believe that women can learn Torah on the same quantitative and qualitative level as men. And we also believe, unequivocally, that women can be ordained, that they can receive smicha, that they can be Torah. Smicha today is not what it was at Sinai. That line of smicha was broken in the 4th century in the time of Hillel II. Smicha today means that you are able to be a decisor of Jewish law, and a teacher who is a decisor is able to attest that you have this ability. And women can do that just as much as men. And at the Beit, our synagogue, in fact, Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz, Rabbi Nat Shabbat, they rise and they give sermons, they can teach Torah, they do all of that.
You build bridges between denominations. How important is it that Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, different denominations have some level of partnership and relationship together?
It's critical. My most important teaching over the years has been love of Am Yisrael, all of Am Yisrael. And I don't only mean those to my left. I mean those to my right, some of my fiercest critics on my right. They're part of my people, they're part of my family, and we have disagreements. But because I believe in dialogue with my Reform and Conservative counterparts, that doesn't mean that we agree on everything. I disagree with them on many issues, and I'm in very good company. They disagree with me. A couple of years ago, I invited Rabbi Dr. David Ellenson to the Beit, to the synagogue, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm happy to come for Shabbat, but I want you to know I can't daven in your shul." I said, "Why can't you daven in my shul?" He said, "Because you have a mechitza, and it's something I don't daven in a place where there's a mechitza." Then he said, "But don't worry." I think he was pushing me a little bit. He said, "Maybe I'll go to Ashkama Reform service and come in," and we have a disagreement on that. I only daven in a mechitza shul, but for me, a mechitza doesn't mean that women hear less or see less. If you walk into our synagogue, into the Beit, where Rabbi Stephen X is now serving, he's just a great senior rabbi.
Terrific.
For me, a mechitza means a proper mechitza shmuli. When you walk into the synagogue and no one's in the synagogue, it means you don't know on which side of the mechitza men or women sit. And I'm happy to say, you've done a little survey that 80% of people who walk into the Beit and come into the sanctuary with mechitza, they get it wrong. Because there's apparently instantaneous reaction that the men are on the right side, which just so happens when you walk in, the women are on the right side.
The LGBT
I want to add something else, that
Yeah.
there are two other features that
Yeah.
I'm very, very proud of. Accessibility. For me, what makes a synagogue beautiful is accessibility. And there are ramps from the men and women's section up to the ark, up to the shulchan where the prayer service takes place. And another interesting feature is the rabbi doesn't sit in the front.
Right.
That's not where the amcha is. It's not where the people are.
Right. That's
It's not where the
dynamic.
Jews are. The rabbis sit amongst the congregation. I want to be the first to the door to welcome people in. And I want to be the last to say shalom to them. My custom was always, when I was senior rabbi, I would be on the men's side. Every man who left, I embraced, and my wife Toby would be on the women's side. She still does that, embracing the women. There's a real sense of a bayit, of a family, of closeness.
That's beautiful. You know, just to understand how big of a deal it is. I still go to synagogues where not only do they not allow a person in a wheelchair to be called to the Torah, but it's not even physically possible. It's really that the way you've structured your shul around that is such a crucial model.
Well, for me, there are two kinds of rabbis. There's a rabbi who sees who's dancing in the circle, and then there's a rabbi who sees who's outside of the circle. And I think the test of community is not the way you reach out to the most powerful. That's simple.
Yeah.
How do you reach out to the most vulnerable? And people who are in wheelchairs, they're not confined to wheelchairs. Yeah. They walk in wheelchairs, and they can dance. Yeah. They may not be able to dance on their feet, but hold their hands. They can dance with their hands, and their eyes light up when they recognize that they're welcomed in and they're part of the community. And when they're welcomed in, something magic happens. Everyone feels this sense of closeness, this sense of family.
Yeah, beautiful. The LGBT community, those who were raised within Orthodoxy, for example, were often shamed and pushed out. Is there a way to be inclusive to that community today? What does that look like?
There must be a way. You know, being gay is not a choice. It's who you are. And people who are gay, they yearn like all human beings yearn for relationships, for intimacy. And I think it's very, very critical for the Orthodox community to welcome the gay community with open arms. I'm very, very proud that the Beit, as a unanimous decision, partners are welcomed into our synagogue as an equal household, along with others. And we encourage, of course, this is the case with SAR Academy, the local school, and the Kinneret School. The children of partners are, of course, welcome. Yeah. Welcome with open arms into the synagogue. For me, it brings tears to my eyes when I sit across the table with someone who is gay and says, I'm Orthodox. I want to be Orthodox. Please don't push me out. I recognize what the Torah says, but we have to find a way to welcome in our gay brothers and sisters.
Moving towards activism, where does the spirit of creating social change come from for you? And what's the balance between activism for Klal Yisrael and activism based on Jewish values in the broader public sphere?
Well, for me, my activism comes from two words, Avat Yisrael. I love my people. On my tombstone, I think he could just say, he loved the Jewish people. That doesn't mean I don't love humankind.
Right.
There is a concept of Mishpachot Amim, the family of nations, which is very, very dear and very, very important to me. And so at 9/11, I made sure with others to be down at ground zero because I felt they probably needed some clergy. That is our responsibility. But no human being can love all people the same. I could have an emotional relationship with any individual, Jew or Gentile, but on a generic level, I have a special love of my inner family, my wife, my children, my grandchildren, my siblings, and my larger family, Am Yisrael. And then there's an even larger family. But the key thing to remember is that a strong sense of commitment to Am Yisrael, to national identity, does not contradict universal consciousness, but is a prerequisite to it. Some of the greatest universal activists are those who are strong Jewish activists. And the person who comes to mind is none other than the great Natan Sharansky, the great prisoner Hossein, who sacrificed his life for Am Yisrael, who sacrificed himself, thank God he's doing well, for Am Yisrael and for Eretz Yisrael. He was the spokesperson of Helsinki Watch. And he's written about that. If you're only for yourself, that could become problematic. If you're only for others, that could be problematic. But once again, as Hillel says, in Eina Nili Nili, if I'm not going to be for myself, who will be for me? If I'm not going to speak out for Soviet Jewry, if I'm not going to speak out for Ethiopian Jewry, if I'm not going to speak out for my brother Jonathan Pollitt, if I'm not going to raise a voice against the convent, which was a terrible profanity. I have great respect for convents, but not at the largest Jewish cemetery in the world at Auschwitz. If I'm not going to speak out, who will? Uchshani latzmi. But if I'm only for myself, no ani, what am I worth? So when Rabbi Ari Hart, who's at the Bayit, when he says, I'm going to Greece, and I'm going to go to the spot where the refugees are coming across the Mediterranean, and then he reports back that the agency, the NGO, which is the first to greet the refugees, is Israel. They come from Israel. And as the only ones who can speak Arabic, they're the ones who are welcoming in the refugees. That's what Am Yisrael is all about.
Yeah, we have the best of the Bayit, Rabbi Exler, Rabbi Hart, and the whole team.
And Sarah, and they're all, and Anat, they're the great of the great.
Similar to that experience, I remember when I went to Haiti after the earthquake, the Israeli medical team was everywhere.
Right.
And it was so beautiful of what Am Yisrael, what Medinat Yisrael is, not only preservation of our nation, but really the Or L'Goyim model.
Yeah, and I think it has to be said that I think that fueling the energy of this movement of social justice, and I think it emerges from a strong Jewish identity and commitment to Eretz Yisrael, is not only Chovevei and Marat. I think the Center for the Jewish Future at Yeshiva University has done extraordinary work in this particular area and in other areas as well. I think this concept of an orthodoxy which is more inclusive, which is non-judgmental, it transcends Chovevei. It transcends Maharat. I think it's the more progressive voices at Yeshiva University. I think it's the more progressive voices at Chabad. I think the more progressive voices within the Hasidic community, within the Satmar community. I think there's a silent majority. I don't know if it's a majority, but I'll use that term, in Teaneck. I think it's in Skokie. I think it's in LA. But many of them are frightened to identify. That's what Porat is all about. Porat is an attempt to send a message. Porat is an attempt to demonstrate that there is a critical mass of Orthodox Jews, I believe in the tens of thousands, who are supportive of the values of an inclusive modern Orthodoxy.
So one of your teachers was Rabbi Soloveitchik, and he really built modern Orthodoxy, in my understanding, around philosophy and Talmud. But it seems like we've moved away from a more intellectually based Orthodoxy. And do you think philosophy still should be relatively central and sort of the study of other academic fields? Or do you think that we should be moving away from that direction?
I'm not sure. I think the Rav was broader than that. I think modern Orthodoxy in those days dealt with two primary issues. The first issue that it dealt with was Hakamat Hamdina. Do you believe that there is religious meaning in the establishment of the State of Israel? Are you supporting the State of Israel? And that split the modern Orthodox community from the Haredi community. And I think the second issue was Torah Umada. How do you look upon studies that are not pure Torah studies? Where the Rav said all studies have the potential to become holy. I actually believe that on those two areas, the State of Israel and general studies, I don't even like the term secular studies, because I think it has the capacity, everything. Rav Kook once said, there's no such thing as the unholy, there's only the holy and the not yet holy. Math and science and English and literature all have the potential to become holy. In those two areas, I think the Haredi world has basically been won over. Not exactly, but they've been won over. I think the Haredi world is very supportive of Eretz Yisrael. They may not sing Hatikva. They may not say Tfilah L'Shlom Hamdina. They may not, but they care about Israel. And more Haredim are being sent to technical schools and to college. And I think, by the way, the modern Orthodox community has gained from the Haredi world in recognizing that modern Orthodoxy is not Orthodoxy light. One has to be very serious about Tfilah B'tzibur, and about learning. And that's why when Rabbi Land became president in the late 70s, he really chucked the term modern Orthodoxy. And the term that was being used is centrist Orthodoxy. And in the Yeshiva University and communities like that today, I think most of the time we'll find either the term centrist Orthodoxy is going to be used, or no descriptive, just Orthodoxy will be used. In contrast to what the Porat world is all about, I think the more progressive voices at YU and Chovevei and Marat, that say unequivocally that there is an inclusive modern orthodoxy, an open modern orthodoxy.
Yeah. So, what does the future look like for this movement? We've a number of institutions you've built over the last 15 years, and what direction is all of this headed now?
Well, whether it's a movement or not,
Okay.
the people who are involved in trying to create change, they're less preoccupied with what this is going to be called. I leave it to historians to decide what this is to be called 20, 30, 40, 50 years after I'm long gone. But one has to be blind not to recognize that in the past 20, 23 years, something extraordinary has happened. As modern orthodoxy was moving precipitously to the right, since then, the last 20, 23 years, look what's happened. 2 rabbinical schools have been established. One for men, Yeshivat Chovevei Torah. One for women, Yeshivat Marad. A new rabbinic organization has been organized. That's no small matter. The International Rabbinic Fellowship, which, like Bet Hillel in Israel, has women as part of its membership. A new Bet Din has been established to deal with the Hara of Agunot, the International Bet Din. JOFA, which is an advocacy group on women's issue, has been established. Rabbi Angel established a think tank of ideas and ideals, and the Center for the Jewish Future, I think, is a piece of beautiful resurgence of modern orthodoxy. We're seeing that resurgence, and whether it's a movement or not, I'm not sure, but something unbelievable is unfolding. And I believe, not in looking over my shoulders, but changing facts on the ground. And by this June, under the leadership of Rabbi Asher Lopan, who's the new president of Chovevei Torah, and our unparalleled Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Dov Linzer, since the Rav, I have not met a Talmud Chacham on the level of my Rebbe,
the greatest.
Rabbi Dov Linzer, one of the greats.
His
greatness is not only what he knows, but his humility.
Humility is remarkable.
He's remarkable. And under their leadership, by this June, there'll be 108 graduates of Chovevei Torah. There will be, by this June, 15 women who have been ordained by Yeshivat Marad, most of them who are serving in synagogues. There are 45 students in Chovevei Torah. There are 25 students in Yeshivat Marad. The future is glorious, I think.
I say this,
and it's not just synagogues. It's we become the biggest feeders for Hillels. Look at the work that you're doing. When I started Chovevei, the dream was everybody has to go into a synagogue. And then I came to the realization: first, not everybody is misugal to work as a rav of a synagogue. People have different strengths. And secondly, for many people, synagogues are big barriers. I remember when Jason Weiner, one of the greats, he was an assistant rabbi out in LA in one of the big shuls out there. And then he, with great competition, he becomes the senior rabbi, the senior chaplain, senior rabbi at Cedar Sinai. And he called me up and he said, Rebbe, I hope you're not disappointed in me that I'm now the rabbi at Cedar Sinai. And then he said, I'll never forget this. He said, I'll tell you something. To get into the place where I was the synagogue assistant rabbi, there are a lot of barriers. To get into Cedar Sinai, there are no barriers as well. And I'm proud of what you're doing.
He has a shul now too, I think. Also,
he's got a shul too. And I mean, the Chevra come up with these concepts and ideas. That's why I'm staying young. They're teaching me. It's like you're learning a piece of Gemara, and if you got the key, it'll take you to places you never ever thought you would go. I had an idea. If you would have told me 15 years ago it would take me to these places, I don't think I would know and understand what you were talking about. But the Chevra, the men and the women, have really, really shown the way. God bless them.
Yeah. So I saved the sweetest of the sweet for the last question. The last question.
Can't let it go without mentioning Rabbi Jeff Fox, who's Rosh Yeshiva.
Right.
Go on and on here.
How the sweetest of the sweet? How central is Hakadosh Baruch Hu to all this, and how do you experience God's presence in the work you do, and how do you bring that to other people?
Hakadosh Baruch Hu is everything, everything. And halacha is a verb, not a noun. What do I mean by that? If it's a noun, it can become end, stop. It becomes the God. And if halacha becomes the God, if it becomes the God, then it's a form of avodah zarah. There's only one HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Idolatry.
Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Halacha is critical, must be meticulously observed. It's not a system of perfection. Only God is perfect. It's a system of excellence. Halacha is a means. It's a means that walks me the path to reaching the divine, to feeling the presence of the divine. The chasm between myself and God is too great. But when the Shabbat candles are lit, when I put on tefillin every morning, through that process, through that ritual, I feel the presence. I feel the presence of God. To paraphrase with Nachman, everyone sings about this. Afilu v'hastara shebetoch hastara. Even in the hiddenness of the hiddenness, even there, Gam Sham Hashem Yiparech. Gam be'acharei hadvarim hakashim ovrim alecha. In the midst of the most difficult times, God declares what Nachman says. God says, Ani Omed, I stand, I stand. And the truth is, I don't want to say anything bad. You can go into a shul and be there for 3 hours and not hear God, not feel God. You say God, but not feel it. That could easily happen. You can be in a Beit Midrash for 6 months, and you can learn how to prepare a cholent on Shabbat and Shoshan Orach Zapara and torts and all of that, but you won't feel God's presence. It must, that spiritual centrality of feeling the presence of God is critical. Maral says, halacha comes from the phrase hitalech. Halacha, it's reflexive of halacha. Hitalech lefanai. Walk before me. That's the goal. The goal of halacha is to feel the kedusha, to feel the presence of God. Hitalech lefanai ve'lei tamim.
I don't think I ever shared this with you, but my first pastoral moment and the moment I decided to take the career path I did, I was at my nanny's, my grandmother's deathbed. And I didn't know how to interact with her. And I walked out of the room and I went back to read this book, this Spiritual Activism, which someone had recommended to me. And something in this book said to me that I needed to create moments that mattered. And I went back for the first time in my life into my grandmother. And I started reciting psalms with her. And I was very uncomfortable doing it because it was a new role for me. But I realized I created a spiritual connection with her, a godliness in that moment that you had sparked. And as I walked out, I said, I'm going to be a rabbi, and I'm going to his rabbinical school. If you had not founded it, I wouldn't have become a rabbi.
And I think that's the key. The key is to feel the presence of God in the good moments, when we sometimes, Vaishmani Shurun Vayivat, sometimes in the best moments we forget the presence of God, to feel God even then, to be in the moment, to feel the presence, and even in the difficult moments. Even in the difficult moments, to do whatever we can. Whatever we can to feel the presence of God. Leonard Cohen, who's I believe from his words, he's a profoundly religious man. He writes about bells. Bells is the symbol of redemption. So you would imagine, what kind of bells should you be ringing? Only the perfect bell. Redemption is perfect. He writes and he sings, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And for me, the light, the first thing that God creates is, God looks at darkness, Vayom Elokim Yehi Or. That's our challenge. That's our covenantal challenge. In a world of darkness, to bring light to the world, to bring light to Am Yisrael, and through Am Yisrael to bring it to the whole world.
Thank you for everything you do, everything you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Shmuly. I welcome everyone to the first Parad program, May 15th at 7 p.m. at Kilat Jeshurun in Manhattan, Rabbi Benny Lau will be there, and Rabbi Chaim Steinmetz, the new rabbi of KJ. Everybody is so welcome to come as an expression of support of the values of an inclusive modern orthodoxy. Join us then.
Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Od Davinu Chai, Od Davinu Chai, Od Davinu, Od Davinu, Od Davinu Chai, Od Davinu Chai.